All right, we are going to talk about an integrated two topic known as polygons. So in chapter one, we are going to explore some geometric relationships in algebraic. We're really going to focus mainly on the geometric relationships that we have. Okay, so one of the things that you will see post on Google Classroom, but you can get one when you come back to class, is a toolkit of these polygons. And these are all different polygons that eventually you'll have memorized. But what I want to talk about is I actually want to talk about some of these markings. Okay, so I want you to notice that, for example, the equilateral triangle. So let's start with this one. I'm not going to talk about every single one, but I'll talk about a few. So notice it says a triangle with all sides of equal length. And notice that there are little tick marks, right, on the sides where they have equal length. Those tick marks are really important because in geometry, we rely on those markings to tell us if things are the same or not. Okay, so whenever you see these tick marks, that means that those two sides are the same. So essentially, when I look at an isosceles triangle, notice that I see a tick mark here and I see a tick mark here. Okay, so that means that two sides are the same, and then the third side is not the same. Okay, so we only want a tick mark where things are the same. Okay, if you read scalene triangle, notice that it says it's a triangle with no sides of equal length. So notice instead of just tick marks, we see one tick mark, then we see two tick marks, and then we see three tick marks. Okay, so how can I actually justify if an angle is also the same? Well, we can do if we take a look at, say, the regular pentagon. Notice that it says it's a five-sided polygon with sides the same, so we see the five tick marks, and the angles are the same. So notice that we see this lovely little angle kind of in the crook of where the two sides are meeting. So anytime that we see angles be the same and matched up, we'll see those little almost looks like half circles. Now, if we have two angles being the same, so if we look at the isosceles trapezoid where it says two parallel sides and two sides of equal length, the one thing that's missing on this is that these sides are equal length, is we see that the sides also have angles in common. So we can either use tick marks, so we see one tick mark with that little half angle and one tick mark with those half angles. So this guy matches up with this guy. And then we see two and two. What we can also do is I could use two little half shapes, right, instead of just tick marks. Again, this is something that we will just be discussing throughout um, this whole chapter and this whole semester. Now, also with angles, what happens if they're very specific angles? What happens if they're right angles? Notice that you see that little symbol right there, which is telling us that it's a right angle. Okay, so symbols are very, very important. Now, one thing that I read in the regular polygon that is in a couple, isosceles trapezoid that we see in a couple of them is how do we talk about parallel sides? Let's talk about a parallelogram, parallel sides. So we're not going to be graphing these on graph paper so that we don't actually know if they have the same slope. So we have to rely on symbols. So when we talk about parallel sides, instead of tick marks, what we use is we use these arrows. So these arrows are telling me that in a parallelogram, the top and bottom are parallel to each other. So they have the same slope. And then notice on the sides, this guy and this guy are also the same. Okay, so make sure that you read over this Polygon graphic organizer. Either pause the video, you can read a couple of these now, or when you come back to class, you can read them. Okay, what we want to make sure that we can also do is eventually be able to look at some pictures and see kind of like what kind of shape is this, right? So this was a worksheet that we passed out in class that's uploaded to Google Classroom, and we only did a couple of the questions. So say we looked at number one, state the most specific name for the shapes below based on their markings. So if we look at A, if you want to pause it and try this on your own, feel free. But I noticed that for A, they have 4 right angles. Okay, so when I think of 4 right angles, I think of a rectangle or a square. I see parallel sides right here and right here, and then a parallel side, even though this one's hard to see, this, I guess it got cut off. They were parallel sides right here. But the most important tell, right, is actually right here. This tick mark. There are tick marks on all 4 of the same sides. So when I put all 4 of these pieces of information together, it kind of looks like it should be a square. So this example is a square. When I look at B, again, I see that it's a triangle. So awesome, I start with that. I see it has a 90 degrees, so I know that it's a right triangle. But again, I want to be specific. I see the telltale sign is that these sides are the same and these angles are also the same. So I'm going to look for a triangle on my Polygon worksheet that has at least the sides the same and the 2 acute angles, and it's an isosceles right triangle. So again, we want to be careful because we do have an isosceles triangle up here, but this one's an isosceles right triangle. Right? So an isosceles right triangle. Okay. And again, I just used the symbol, but we could, write it out if we wanted to. And then last but not least, again, I see that A and C are pretty similar to each other. See, all 4 sides are the same. I see 2 sets of parallel lines, but C does not have right angles. So I know it's not a square. So if I go to my worksheet, I see that a parallelogram might work, but unfortunately not all 4 sides are the same. So I go to the second page and I see the rhombus. So this one looks like the rhombus, just on its different side. So that's what this is. Okay, so you should be able to eventually look at some of these pictures and know exactly what shape it is. You should also be able to make markings. So again, use the given name and mark all true information about the shape. So again, here's an example of, here's a triangle, but I said write it as an isosceles triangle. So parallelogram, we would say that this side is parallel to that side. I would say this side is parallel to that side, and then that matches up with that, and that matches up with that side. Oops, bad drawing. Right trapezoid, again, they have to have 2 right angles, and then this is parallel to that. Okay, and again, if you don't remember what these look like, you can always look at your Polygon graphic organizer and see kind of like what is happening, right? A kite is our last one, right? So that side matches up with that side, that angle matches, or that side matches up with that side. Okay. And finally, the last question that I talked about in class was this one. Okay, so I want you to think about which of the shapes are regular. Okay, and we're going to circle them right now. And I want you then to pause the video and answer number 4, what you think makes a regular shape. So you're going to circle this one, and you are going to circle this guy. You're going to circle this guy. Here's my hint, right? If you're struggling on what makes a shape regular, look to see what's in common between the 3 highlighted ones, but also look at the Polygon worksheet. Again, you can pause the video, rewind it a little bit, and see. What is in common between all of these? What makes it regular? All right, so if you pause the video, thought about some stuff, I noticed that here in the top one, all 3 sides are the same, all 3 angles are the same. This is an equilateral triangle. The second one, this one right here that I'm talking about, all 4 sides are the same, all 4 angles are the same. Okay, and finally, when I look at the third one, I notice that all 5 sides are the same and all 5 angles are the same. So what makes a shape regular? All angles are equal and all sides are equal. So those are two very important details to make a shape regular. Now I said to look at your Polygon worksheet. We actually talked about one. It's highlighted, regular polygon, right? So notice it's five-sided polygon with all sides being equal and all angles being equal. Notice here we see a regular hexagon, and again, all sides are equal and all angles also are equal. Okay, so it has to have both of those things in common in order for it to be considered regular. And that's all that we talked about when it comes to Polygon graphic organizers.